This is Julian. I'm out here at the Outlaw Drums compound, and you are watching the Process Podcast Show.
I want to say welcome to the Process Podcast Show. Today we've got a very special and amazing guest. My really good friend Julian Rouse is on the show today, and he's going to tell us his story and his love for drums and music, and how he loves just tons of different vintage gear, Sonor gear, and just a very adamant drummer. Loves music, loves the craft of it, and just can't wait to hear his story. So hang out with us for the next 30 or 40 minutes. We're going to have a good time talking about all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, Julian, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming, man. And so I probably know few people that have the heart and dedication to drumming like you do. I mean, it is insane some of the things that you have done over the few years, and it just reminds me about this time last year. I mean, you were selling everything you had to pursue this dream in drumming music,
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, and tell me about your story, and tell me about why drums, man?
That's a good question. I've just the first time I started playing, I really enjoyed it, and I don't really take myself very seriously as a drummer. I found my groove years ago. I'm really more of a gearhead, and I've had a lot of gear. And this time last year, I was offloading guitars and recording equipment and all sorts of stuff, getting ready for a big move up north. But the gear has just really been a big thing for me, and I've got friends that criticize that, but I know people with $70,000 and $80,000 cars that don't make money driving. I know people that have got a $250,000 house, but they don't make money off of having a $250,000 house.
Yeah.
And it's just been something of interest to me. I feel like I'm relatively brand loyal on things, and I've had a struggle with some of that over the years for various reasons, and kind of had issues. But anyway.
So what are you talking about? Say brand loyal. So you very advocate Sonor, you really stand behind Sonor drums. Why do you like Sonor so much?
That's a good question, and really I don't know. I mean, the starting point for me was a huge AC/DC fan, and Phil Rudd played Sonor, and in my early days of listening to them, which was about 40 years ago, just everything sounded real good. The recordings were always good. Everything sounded great and all that. And it was just something I liked about his playing, and a component of that was Sonor. That was the sound, and the fact that he chose Sonor like that. Well, it kind of drove me that way, and so over the years, that's just kind of been ingrained in my mind. And I've had a few times of trying to break away from it, just trying to expand myself as a drummer, or seek new things. And recently I went to a different brand for a while and had a completely different configuration. But as far as my current setup, I've been playing it for a long time, and it really fits. And so to go add these tom-toms was a lot of fun. But in the overall scheme of things, I guess I'm kind of in a comfort zone with my playing. I don't really push the envelope. I'm not a drummer's drummer. I've never professed to be. I've just got this real simple thing I do, and it has worked with bands, almost every band I've played with, and I've been in several church situations, and I just don't get negative pushback. I'm not a lead drummer. I don't overplay. I try to keep it simple and tasteful and all that stuff.
It's kind of the best, just keep it in the pocket.
Right, and there's guys that really excel at going over the top, or embellishing in their playing and all, and that's fine if that works for them.
Yeah.
Just for me, that's not me. It's just I'm kind of a simple. There used to be a local drummer, Randy Bramberry, and he was a big influence on me, and he was very tasteful. So it's just been it's like people that go out and they buy an old car and soup it up and all that. They're not going to go race it, and they're not going to make extra money driving around in the car they've put a huge engine. It's kind of the same thing for me.
Yeah.
I like trying new sounds. I try not to buy the same thing twice.
Right.
You know, if I've already had it and already experimented, now lately that changed. I had before I went to Drum Center of Portsmouth in New Hampshire.
I want to talk about that in just a second.
Sure. And so I was playing with the Mac George Band, and I wound up buying a Pro Light brass snare drum that turned out to be just an absolutely amazing snare drum. Now, this is after owning 19 different Gretsch snare drums. So when I switched back to Sonor, which for the last couple of years I've kind of been hot and cold with Sonor for several reasons. But anyway, so I got this Pro Light snare drum, and it was everything I ever wanted in a snare drum. It just sounded good. It was really bright and articulate. You could really, I mean, if you really dug into it, it could handle it. It had those heavy die-cast hoops that no other drum company on the planet uses. So the reason it had to go was in a funny story. Backing up a little bit. I'd been talking to Shane at Drum Center about going up there for years. And, I had an interest in going to work for him and all that. You know, the biggest independently drum store on the planet, and it's an amazing place. So I finally, after all these years, went up there a little over a year ago.
It's like the biggest drum store in the United States, isn't it?
It's the biggest. It's the physically largest independently owned drum store anywhere. Now I don't know what other company is bigger, physically bigger, but I mean there's just a lot of floor space and all that. And
on an average, like how many drum kits they got up there?
I don't know, but I can tell you this: when I was looking into things, and I'll dig into this in a minute, they had 33 SQ2 drum sets.
33 drum sets.
Yeah, these are just SQ2s. Now this is the top tier custom order Sonor stuff. This doesn't include Sonor's SQ1s and their Pro Lights and all that stuff that are just standard order stuff. This is 33 custom order, just to give you an idea. And that's a lot of high-end inventory just from one brand. Now, the reason I knew that, I went to see Shane, and I went to go meet Shane, because we'd always wanted to meet. Me and Shane were we've always, I think Shane would refer to me as a friend. And I've known him for over 20 years when he was still at the drum shop in Portland. And I did a little business with him there. Then we became competitors for a while when I had my drum shop, which did not last long. I didn't have a bad business plan. I had absolutely no business plan. And so it fed me for about a little over 2 years, and then it folded. And if you want to come back to that later, we can. So anyway, I've known Shane a long time.
Drums are tough, man.
They are. And then, my problem with that was that I specialized in one brand. Plus, I was in Albany, Georgia, and there's virtually no customer base there.
Yeah, facts.
Not if you're trying to survive in retail. So anyway, I go up and meet Shane, and the idea was we were just going to kind of, we were going to talk about stuff and just kind of meet each other and, all that stuff for the first time. And then maybe when it got time for things to pick back up, maybe he'd offer me a job. So I go up there and meet, and, Shane's a very busy guy. This is a very busy store. It's hard to get him on the phone, and so I'm thinking that I'll get up there, and I'm supposed to meet him at 4 o'clock, and I figured, okay, I'll talk to him in between phone calls, in between him going out to the customer, to the sales floor, and dealing with customers or issues or whatever. I get there, and 4 o'clock comes, and it's like me and Shane are the only two guys on the planet. There were no disruptions. I mean, I had the guys' undivided attention. There was a huge, I think I'm, correct in saying there's a huge mutual respect there. I think Shane had a lot of respect for my background and knowledge and all that with Sonor and some specialized parts of Sonor and all that from over the years. And so he gave me a tour of the whole facility, including an off-site warehouse, which was absolutely huge. And I mean, mind-boggling huge. Then we went around town into Portsmouth, and he showed me his original store locations and showed me somewhere he lived and all that. And then we went to dinner. We'd always talked about meeting up for a good steak, and it was a good steak. And we had a good talk, and then we went to a cigar bar and all that. And from about 4 o'clock till about 11 o'clock, it was just me and Shane. If I'd go to the bathroom, I'd come back and he'd be on his phone, and he'd wrap up whatever, and he'd put the phone down, and then that was it. He was done with the phone. And I found it interesting that he was able to turn off the rest of the world and focus on what we were doing. I thought it was really cool. Yeah. So anyway, and something else too, as a customer of his for a long time, I did a lot of business with him, especially in 2021, a whole lot of business. And, when you're doing that kind of business, not everything always comes off without some hitches.
Yeah.
And so we talked about some things, and I was absolutely candid. I'm a pretty much a tell it like it is kind of guy. I mean, I was respectful, but at the same time, he listened to what I had to say, but there had been a little glitch here and there with some things. And, he didn't get offended. He just let me talk, and he asked me questions and asked me how I deal with certain situations and all that. It was a great meeting.
Yeah.
And,
because you basically sold everything that you had, didn't you? To move up there, right?
If it didn't fit in the CRV, it didn't make it.
Yeah.
No, I did stick something. I stuck a bunch of cases.
This was this time last year?
Yeah, this time last year. Actually, today, I think, a year ago today, I got an address at the UPS store for forwarding my mail and my checks and all that. So, anyway, so we get done. He drops me off at where I was staying, and he contacts me at 6:30 in the morning and says, "Hey, can you go back to the store and meet with a couple of the guys?" And one of them was one of the managers. And I said, "Sure." So I was there at 10 o'clock, and the store wasn't open yet, so they didn't know who I was. And, well, they knew who I was. They didn't know why I was back. But anyway, I talked to these guys, and we stood there almost in the doorway, me and Tony, for it seemed like 15 or 20 minutes, but we actually stood there about 2 hours just talking. And everything just flowed really well. So, I've been to Maine to eat, and we went and did that, and I've looked around the area a little bit, so I'm ready to go. I go get in the car. I'm not even back to I-95 yet, and Shane's on the phone, and he said, "Hey, I had no idea I was going to be saying this to you, but be looking for an apartment." And so I said, "Good deal," and he actually offered to look for one for me. And looking back, I wish I'd have taken him up on that. But that's a side story. So anyway, I get back, and I'm on cloud 9, right? So I'm coming back, and I took 2 or 3 days to come back because I like to stop and do things, and I drink a lot of coffee, so got a lot coming in, you got a lot going out, so you got to make stops for that. So I take my time coming back, and what I was thinking was, man, this is all, I'm riding high right now. I'm going to get home, and I'm going to go to bed and get a good night's sleep and wake up and think, what in the hell did I just agree to? Really? I mean, seriously, because I know how I am. I can do things
Yeah, because I was talking to you, just like, you sell this, you sell that, you sell your bed, you sell everything. I was just like,
yep.
Huh.
Yep.
You're going all the way with this. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
I mean, the dedication that you have to even have to do something like that and just sell everything. 4 drums, man.
Well, and it was probably $40,000 or $50,000 worth of gear between my recording equipment and drums and all that stuff. So I'd been changing some stuff out already. So like I had a lot of Gretsch. I had 19 Gretsch snare drums, 6 drum sets, and all that. And I'd already been moving a lot of that out because I decided to go back with Sonor again.
Well, so tell me what happened with Shane in that. Tell me what happened with that whole deal.
Well, so during our talking, Shane said, well, we've got to decide when to bring you on. He said, I'd say that the 1st of November or the 1st of January.
What were you hired there to do?
Sales and customer service.
Sales and customer service.
Yeah. And so he'd already told me, and I'm going to probably get some of this wrong. He'd already told me things start to pick up in November. And so one of the dates he gave me was November the 1st. And I said, well, Shane, it seems to me that if things start ramping up in November, maybe I need to come on board in October and get trained, and that way I've got wind in my sails instead of now I'm dragging somebody else down trying to train me when things are picking. And he agreed to that. So I get back and I start liquidating stuff left and right. And the close, and I'm one of those guys that when I get ready to do something, I'm ready to do it. Or if I'm done with something, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Which played a lot of factor, a lot of effect on how things played out all the way around.
Especially while you're here in Georgia.
Right.
1 year later. How long were you up there for?
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
So get all the stuff sold off.
How cool was that? I mean, you're working at one of the biggest drum stores in the U.S. And yeah, I mean, that had to be really cool. Though.
In theory, it was awesome. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes you just got to stop. And I asked Shane this. Because, Shane's beginnings as an entrepreneur in this business were very small. They had a little small store. He was running it off his phone. Every now and then he'll repost a picture of, this itty bitty nothing little operation. And now it's this huge, massive thing. I mean, nobody anywhere has got videos.
Yeah, I've learned so much from Shane, just watching some of the old videos of him.
Absolutely.
And we've even tried to get our drums in the shop one time, way back when. We haven't done it recently, but we had one of my buddies knew Shane. He called him up and said, "Hey man, my buddy builds drums," and he sent him a picture of one of our old drums, which he was like, "Man, they look cool and everything, but we've got selling so many other custom drums right here. What makes their drums different?" And that's what kind of really set me on a path in a sense to be able to kind of make something different and unique. And plus our badge was real bulky and he didn't like the way our badge, so we changed a lot of stuff. But I've learned a lot of things just from Shane's videos and the way he does a lot of things on that, because he's very knowledgeable on drums and really cool. I never physically met him per se, but I know of him pretty good.
A lot of people think Shane's cocky and arrogant and, that kind of thing. I don't really think that's accurate. I think Shane's misunderstood. I think that when you've got the beginnings Shane did, he walked out of an established drum business to go do his own thing. And, I think there's times that I wouldn't want to say impressed with himself, but I think he's exceeded anything he imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the building he's got. The building is absolutely gorgeous. And inside there's these square rectangular poles that are not square rectangular, because animals used to live in that building. And they would scrub up against these things, and you can actually see where they wore down the wood over the years. Just a very impressive facility. So that was beyond anything he probably ever imagined going into this. And so, I don't think it's... I think a lot of times he's kind of surprised where he is.
Yeah.
And...
seems like he's real humble.
I think he's more humble than people think.
Yeah.
But the thing you got to remember, too, the guy lives and breathes this stuff. And so when he's got an opinion on something, it's not just, I'm Shane and what I say goes, and this, it's based on his experience and background with stuff. And I've seen videos where he didn't like something about a certain something, and there was a reason for it. I got back and started liquidating all my stuff. And I wound up there several weeks sooner than expected.
I can't imagine you being early for anything.
Yeah, right. If I'm not early, I'm late.
I know. I was like, what time Julian coming? So I want to say, all right. Well, if I say 9, he's gonna be there about 8:30. So do I say 8:30, and then we can start at
that's just built into me.
I wish more people were like that instead of being late to every daggone thing.
Well, I'll tell you the trick to it. Grow up and live most of your adult life driving vehicles that you can't rely on. So you'll go ahead and build in extra time for contingencies.
Or I got to put air in this tire, or I got to get gas.
Yeah,
oil and something.
Yeah, the carburetor's falling apart. I got to piece it back together, so I better leave 2 hours early. Just it's only a 5-minute drive, but that's just part of it. It's just just part of. Anyway, so I get there weeks early, and they knew I was coming, but they didn't expect me as soon as I got there. So when I got there really wasn't a strong game plan for me.
Like what job you was gonna do?
I was going to work sales and customer service, and which included a lot of phone.
But you already did all this stuff with your history with Sonor and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot.
So what got you the job in the first place? Like, what got you the place up there with Shane? Your history with with Sonor and knowing your craft like you do, is that kind of what got a leg in or so?
I think that was a lot of it. Yeah, and
because you used to sell like Sonor drums, right?
I did. I was an authorized dealer from the end of 2003 till the end of 2005 or beginning of 2006. Yeah. But and we were both part of the Sonor Museum website and their message board and all that. And that's where a lot of my business came from. And that was actually a downfall for me in the long run. Yeah. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And that's pretty much what I did. Just like I said, there was just never a game plan. We could have a whole different conversation of how I wound up being a Sonor dealer, which was never even on my radar to do. It was a means to an end to get Sonor parts.
Yeah.
I never desired to have a dealership. And so anyway, I about got lost at where we were at. So, wow, he hired me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had developed a pretty solid background with Sonor knowledge and all that, and he knew that. And I'm a big customer service fan. I want everybody satisfied. If somebody buys something from me, I'm careful with how I pack it. Want to make sure they get what they're expecting, and that kind of thing. And I've tried to operate with a very high level of integrity, and I think that's what he liked. And the evidence of that was the tone of our conversations or the conversation we had when I went up there and met with him. I liked the fact that I could just tell it like it was without hurting his feelings or pressing a button or whatever. And I think he liked the fact I was just openly talking, and it wasn't like an abusive, well, y'all shouldn't be doing this. I'd just say, this was the issue I had.
Yeah.
And I think he liked the fact that I was just open and direct, and I wasn't trying to be ugly or anything, but we were just having a two-way conversation.
How many people worked up there?
You know what? You'd think I'd know that. I'm going to say 10 or 15. It's not a huge staff really for the
10
level.
Or 15 people working in a drum shop is a lot, though. I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, when I see how hard it is to make a living with drums just here in South.
You gotta figure too. They're the world's largest Gretsch dealer, and Gretsch isn't their only thing. I mean, they got so many brands they carry and so much stuff they do. So I'm not going to get into gross annual sales or anything, but it's pretty impressive. I'll just leave it with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, where were we?
You were telling about what happened with why he hired you and what happened
right
with the ultimate, you being down here in Georgia now.
Yeah. Well, so I get back up there, and they hadn't really built a game plan for me because originally I was gonna, they were expecting me to be there on 1 month, then it was gonna be another month sooner, then all of a sudden, bam, here he is, and so they didn't really figure out what they were going to do with me. They didn't have a game plan, so they just kind of put me in the mix of all the other salespeople and stuff. And a couple of things about the move. There were some things I didn't think about. I knew the cost of living was going to be different. I didn't dig into it real deep, but I think some information I was given about rent prices and all that was old information. I was anticipating around $1,000 a month for rent, which was way off. And the only thing I could find even close was 20 miles away up in, I think it was Dover. And it's a culture shock too. I go and I'm parked beside the building. The guy comes up to show me this room, and he said, "You can't park there. You can't park off street. And then if it's a snow day, you can't park on the street either. You got to go park, over at the bus terminal or whatever it was. And I'm thinking, okay. And people are asking me, do you have a 4-wheel drive? And I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, winter's coming, and I'm not physically prepared. I'm not mentally prepared. I went and spent $75 on socks one day. Man, I got all these socks at home now. They're just way too hot to even wear. I'll find some. I might use them for handling symbols or something. But anyway, so there was just a lot of things that happened. So I really enjoyed working with the customers. The cost of living was jarring, and so part of the thing for me that really was disappointing was when it seemed like a great idea from the outside. Once you get in there and you realize, what, the cost of living is killing me. See, there's no income tax for New Hampshire. All the tax money comes from property owners. Property taxes are high, which means rents are high. And Shane's big old beautiful building he's got, that cuts into his profit. See, these are things people don't think about. Let's go after the rich guys. Well, guess what? They're already digging in them a lot harder than you think they are. First of all, property taxes. Yeah. Every time Shane goes and spends money, he's paying the same sales tax rates I'm going to pay. And then, he's got all these employees, and there's expense involved with that stuff, and Social Security, he has to pay half of the Social Security tax and all that stuff. People don't stop and think about all it really takes to run a business.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can put this back on track now. So you're looking at really high rents because of the fact that's where a lot of the tax basis comes from, is property tax. So that means higher rents and all that. So this pay that I was getting would have been great pay, considering down to South Georgia. Up there, with the cost of living, and last time I was up there, a bag of M&Ms was like $9 and something.
Tony, gone.
I'm trying to tell you.
That's crazy.
So now here I am working what should be my dream job, and I'm starting to realize, you know what? My days of just spending money on drum gear are over. It's gonna, I don't have a wife that's working. I'm not living at home with mama. I'm up here a grown single man. I'm having to do all this on my own. And I stayed in a motel for a couple of weeks, which was okay, and it was pretty close to the store. But then Shane figured out something else for me. So for about a month there, I really wasn't having to pay any rent. But eventually I was going to have to find somewhere, and it was winter time, and I could have gone and got summertime, everything rents out, all the houses and all that stuff. So during the winter, all this stuff's open. You can get good rates on all that. And I started to do it that way, but I'm like, that's just going to put stress on me 6 months from now when it's starting to be vacation time, it's getting warm, and people are coming back. So, and then things like, we don't have car inspections down here. And I'm driving this old Honda CRV. I go to the shop because I'm going to have an inspection, which did not even, I spent $4,000 getting my otherwise perfectly driving car up to speed for an inspection. $4,000.
Jeez.
An unexpected bill. And so all this stuff just, and then you don't realize too, when you're leaving your entire family and all your friends behind. And my daughter had several months prior gotten into an accident that almost killed her, and there was still some things legally and all that stuff she was having to face eventually, and that's just a long way to be from home. So, between the cost of living and family stuff and all that, and, I hate to say this way, but it was just, it was a dream job. It was just a job. When all the new wears off, you're getting up, you're going to work, you're doing your thing. And then the big turn for me was I wound up down in the basement, which was substantially cooler than the rest of the building. And it wasn't even, the temperatures at night were like in the low 40s. It dropped into the 20s the actual night I left. But you're down there in the basement, and I'm on the phone and the computer. I'm fielding phone calls and emails and all, and stuff coming through our chats and all that. And you would think that being drum related stuff would be very exciting, but I've had 20 years on the phone in front of a computer, between collections, recruiting truck drivers, doing finance and all this kind of stuff. And that was a large part of me wanting to make a life change. And then I wind up down there in the basement doing the same thing again. That it's a different subject, but it's the same activity. I'm sitting there in a chair all day. And now, I could get up and move around. I could go upstairs and make sure all the TVs were still on and playing the product information and all that. I could go up and talk to people and, fraternize and all that. I wasn't bolted to the chair, but substantially that's what I was doing. And very quickly it became frustrating. And, not seeing my daughter, I'm, dealing with the financial aspect of it, which, was different than I anticipated. And now I'm back taking these aggravating, frustrating questions. I had a guy from Mexico wanted me to send him a picture and a price of all of our cymbals.
So are you and Shane still good? Y'all still
No,
talk?
we're not. I was coming to that point, and I had a phone call one night with a guy, and I'm not going to go into the details just because I don't think it's the right thing to do. But he was asking me absolutely nutty questions. He was trying to decide between a high dollar DW drum and a cheap electronic drum set, which, how can you even be in a conundrum over which way you want to you want to go?
What are you doing with it? Yeah.
Right. And this goes on for a good 20 or 25 minutes, and we never even get to a question. He's explaining to me who his drum teachers were, which we're not talking Dave Weckl or anybody like that I would actually know. These are just local guys. But he's giving me his full background. There's other phone calls coming in. There's all this time we never even get to a question. And I finally put the phone on hold, and I said, hey, how do I move this call along? He said, get him off the phone. And, if he doesn't have a question, just tell him we got to deal with something else. So I just got back on the phone and I said, hey, look, do this for me. Just keep researching tonight between your options, and then either email me in the morning to call you or call me back, and whatever you've decided. Actually do this. Put whatever you want in your cart on the website, and we'll review it in the morning and figure out which way to go. Well, he never called back, but the next morning, first thing, other stuff coming up. I'm sitting there at in my spot downstairs in the basement, really fed up. And I sent Shane a message through our instant messaging system, and I said, what time are you going to be here today? I need to talk. And he said, well, I'm at the hospital with my dad. And I said, okay. I said, I'm sorry you're going through that. I said, but I'm resigning. And what I figured was going to happen, I thought I'd get a message back, say, hey, I don't know what you got going on, but if you can hang around today, just, go play a drum set, go shopping, go do whatever you want to do, but let me get back there tomorrow and we'll deal with this head on. The response I got was, go see Tony and Jeremy for offboarding. So, didn't sound like we were going to talk. Huh?
For offboarding.
Right. So, no opportunity to talk about it or anything. And but you know what? At the same time, I told him I was resigning. You know, I have to consider the fact of how I sounded. You know, I'm sitting here about his response, but looking back, I didn't leave a door open for talking.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, you had your mind made up, didn't you? Or could he probably come in there and it's like, hey, can we work out this a little bit different? Could things went a different way if he would have been open to talk to you?
I don't know. If I'd have told him, Shane, working the phone is absolutely driving me bonkers. I can't stand it. I don't know how that would have gone.
Yeah. That's kind of what you did on your last job, and you was kind of wanting to kind of get away from that.
That's
right?
what I've done on my last 20 years of jobs.
You'd be wanting to go out there and just kind of
Right.
work on the drums and test the drums out and tune them and getting them all set up and talking to the customers when they come in and that kind of stuff, right?
Right. But, you know, I was never disillusioned. I do want to be clear on that. I knew that eventually this was going to be a customer support on the phone, dealing with problems and giving, you know, quotes and all. I knew that eventually it was going to come to that.
Yeah.
You know, but in the overall mix of everything going on, the cost of living, so being so far away from my daughter, whose mother passed away 7 years ago, you know, I mean, it's a lot different when you're the only living parent of a child that's in trouble, or that you think is in trouble. Turns out she wasn't, but I didn't know that at the time. So I'm just saying the overall, it's like going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
You know, a can of deodorant's not that much money. A tube of toothpaste is not that much money. Shampoo's not, but when you got a whole basket of this stuff and you get to the register, that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
No particular situation in and of itself made me second guess anything. But everything going on together was like, you know what? I think, yeah. And, you know, if I had it to do all over again, if I'd have known that my message to Shane was going to trigger the response it did, looking back, I'd have waited a day to talk to him.
Yeah, 'cause he was probably going through a little bit of a hard spell right then at that moment too. Maybe just the universes didn't quite line up, right?
Yeah, maybe, you know, and he's up there worried about his dad.
Yeah.
You know, and here I am. Yeah. Well, I'm quitting, you know, and you know, I don't know how that. All this stuff had kind of built up in my mind, and there's other aspects of this that I'm not even going to go into. But just one morning, it all started with the phone and the computer and all that stuff, and I was just flustered. And I sent Shane a message through our instant messaging system, and I said, "What time will you be here today? I need to talk." And you know, I'm not exactly sure what response I expected. I was hoping that we'd have a conversation. I just explained to him, you know, I know this is the position you offered me. And, you know, I figured since it was going to be drum-based stuff, it was going to be a lot of fun and all that stuff. But, you know, in operation, for me, it's turned into more of the same of what I've been doing with sitting in front of the computer and talking on the telephone. And, you know, it's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
And the response I got was his father was in the hospital. I forget why. I mean, I don't believe it was something minor, but anyway, so he was in the hospital with his dad, and he would be there the next day. And, you know, it's basically like blurting out a response. I'm trying to be quick and all that because I understand he's got more in his mind that more than me. So I just said, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm resigning. And I basically wanted him to know that I was struggling with the fact that, you know, I'm just not feeling my new life. You know, I'm very detached physically from my family and my daughter, you know, the one that got in the wreck, and I'm the only living parent she's got. And if she gets in a jam, I am way long way down the road. So I sent that, and his response to me was to meet with Jeremy and Tony for offboarding. Well, apparently, uh, you know, I mean, he knows me. We've known each other a long time. So I said I'm resigning. So I don't think he read into that anything that that alluded to the fact that I need to talk. I said I was leaving.
Yeah.
And so he accepted it as that, and he came back with a very dry and to the point response, responding to me. I wish I hadn't have done it that way. I wish.
Like if you'd have went back, how would you have handled this? Would you have even went if you could go back? Would you have done that? Would you? Because I know you've learned, and we learn through experiences, and it kind of makes you a better person, and it kind of. But would you have? If you could go back in time, would you still want up to Drum Center?
If I could go back in time, I don't know that I probably would not.
Yeah.
If the opportunity were right now, I would.
Yeah. Because
things are a lot different in my life right now. My daughter has recovered from the accident. Some issues we thought were outstanding are not.
Yeah.
There's a lot that had my mind on her, and she's off doing her own thing now anyway.
Yeah.
She's getting a degree in something, and so I don't feel as rooted in my current life as I I uprooted myself to go up there last year. This year would be completely different. But that's not an option.
So if Shane was to listen to this podcast, what do you have to say? Do you have the same thing to say to him?
Well, you know what? I've attempted to contact Shane a number of times. Let me dig into that one a little bit. Shane has not responded to me since I left. The last thing Shane has had to say to me was see, the two managers for offboarding, and that was the last contact I've had from him. I have contacted him numerous times, because I think Shane's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people feel that way, and I know that some people don't, for whatever reason. But I was in the same boat a long time ago when I had my dealership. Some people hated me, some people. That's just how this country is now.
You really like somebody, or you don't like them at all.
That's right.
And a lot of times, there's not a reason why not to like somebody. They just maybe they feel a little threatened. Maybe they feel a little bit. It makes you feel a little insecure, and maybe you're two kind of alike. But there's a lot of reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I've got absolutely no problem with Shane.
Yeah.
And I have I've made several attempts to try to patch things up, not to go back to work up there.
Yeah.
But I even drove back up there.
You drove back all the way back up. Yeah.
Yeah, and the excuse I gave was because I was going to go to Maine and have lobster. But I've got kind of a quirky sense of humor too. So
sometimes I have a hard time getting it. Sometimes, I'll be like, okay. I'm like that anyway. My wife will be trying to tell me something like funny, and I don't know if she's like trying to be funny or being serious. I'm like,
Well, sometimes I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I'll give them bits and pieces of something, and it'll take somebody a while for their brain to process it and add the missing parts, and then it gets really funny. But so some people just don't get my humor.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted a road trip, and I could have gone out west. I could have gone to Sweetwater. I went to Sweetwater with my daughter in 2018. That was certainly a trip I could have made. But a large part of the reason I took the route I did was specifically to go back to Drum Center of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And incidentally, I have done business with them lately. And anyway, Shane was there. He was downstairs. I could have gone down and ambushed him. I mean, there was nothing stopping me from going down where he is. I know right how to get to it.
Yeah.
And but I was respectful enough. I asked the front desk to see if I could talk to him, and he was busy. And then I asked the guy at the desk. I said, is he like busy right now, or is he busy the rest of his life, and he's just not ever going to talk to me? And I think the guy had more information than he was giving me. I think I don't think Shane's ever going to talk to me again. And I hate it's that way. I part of me, I'm a very analytical person. I would like to understand Shane's emotions on this. I don't know if he's highly ticked off. If somehow,
why would he be mad? Like, what did you do that would even make him mad? You think?
Well, Shane made a job for me. Shane wasn't he was not actively looking
Looking
for an
for an
employee.
gotcha. He was
He,
like,
yeah, and and like I say, this goes back 20 years. This whole relationship thing goes back 20 years. When I had an email one time where me and Shane were talking about something, and he said, I actually consider you a friend in an email. And it's not just like some business guy. It's not like your insurance agent, where you talk to him from here and y'all tell each other a joke or whatever. And you go, we actually, we had some in-depth conversations, and I was having some sleep issues one time, and he knew it. And he sent me links to these things that he thought would help. I mean, uh, and I don't remember this specifically, but he was talking about when he first went out on his own with and started DCP. I was very supportive. Well, I don't recall doing anything that was over and above. I don't feel like I did a favor or anything. I thought Shane was a good guy, and I was excited for his operation. Mine didn't work out, but he had better connections than I did. He knew the inside folks with all these different companies and all that, and but of course I was going to be supportive.
yeah,
He always treated me real good when he worked for the drum shop, and and we had a lot of interactions through the Sonor Museum message board, and and anyway, I'd send people to Shane, whether he was still at the drum shop or with his new operation, But what I'm trying to do is establish the fact that this wasn't just a thing where this is a guy I bought drums from sometimes. We had a bit of a friendship. And when I went to leave, one of the things Jerry mentioned is he said, I know that, one thing I think is bothering you. And I think he touched on something that I didn't even get. He said, I know you and Shane were already friends before you came up here. He said, and this is, October is the time of year when Shane takes his vacation and he's not in the shop very much and all that. And I think that was another component of it. I went up there thinking, okay, I'll get to hang with Shane a little bit, even if it's just at the shop.
yeah,
And that just really didn't happen. Once I was in there, I just, I'm just an employee going to work. And not that it should have been any other way. I'm not saying that. But, that was just part of it too. It's like, it seems like your dream job, but when you get there, it's just a job.
just a job.
You're just getting up and you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
And, I did get some cool stuff though. I mean, I went to the 400th anniversary of the Zildjian. They had a concert in Boston. That was awesome. I got to go see, Dennis Chambers play. And if I'd have stayed there, there'd have been all kinds of cool stuff when the new products were rolling out. I actually got to be in the thing where they brought out the DWE, the electronic DW kit.
Oh man.
And stuff like that intrigues me. I love learning about products. And,
so you love about gear. So it's kind of on a positive note too. So like you're doing a lot of stuff now. Like you're buying a lot of these vintage drums, and buying a lot of drums and repurposing them and reselling them. That's kind of what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of back to my roots.
Yeah. That way you're in control of it, and you don't have to be like somewhere else.
Right. I'm trying to. Right now is a horrible, horrible market for selling anything, and I think you know that. And so I'm.
Yeah, it is bad right now. It's really hard right now. Like people are just not buying everything, especially not until after the election and all that, because every time this comes up, I mean, there is a little place, and thankfully, we can kind of pull back and do other things, but and get caught up on podcast episodes. And I'm trying to be putting out more podcast episodes and getting some cool folks like you coming up here, man. And so it's really cool, really cool.
So what I'm doing right now, and it's all Sonor except for a few things I've got that I bought from myself. I bought some Tama gear, and I've still got some of it left. But I'm buying and selling, or actually right now I'm just pretty much just buying. I'm buying stray items. I'm buying parts. When I find something that's a good deal that I think I can sit on it a while and flip it later, I'm doing that. I'm hoping that after the election, we see the economy resurge a little bit. If that doesn't happen,
yeah,
I've got a lot of scrap garbage in my house I'm not going to know what to do with. except for sell it for pennies on the dollar. And I just did that a year ago, and I'm not wanting to live that life all over again. I've got all this stuff, and I'm selling it for way. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah.
But that's how I got started a long time ago. Was on the Sonar Museum. I was buying parts. I was buying old raggedy drums and stripping them for parts or fixing them up and whatever. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Is I'm acquiring stuff, and then hopefully when the economy picks back up, then I'll start reselling this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm selling a little bit now, but this is how that all started for me a long time ago. And then there was a drum company in Germany that was buying parts directly. And this is something I want people to understand about my drum shop from 20 years ago. ST Drums would buy parts directly from Sonor in Germany, and they would resell them. And I had been buying my stuff through Dana Bentley out in California, my new item, my new parts. So he's buying them wholesale, selling them to me at a thin or no discount at all. So I'm paying full retail or pretty close for these parts I'm trying to flip or to use for repairing drums. So I'm like, let me just see if I can go direct. And HSS, Honor, HSS was the distributor at the time. I contacted them, so hey, can I buy parts direct? You know, and they said, well, to do that, you'd have to have a dealership, and they had 3 levels of dealership. And so I went with the lowest level of dealership, which was primarily the import stuff and all that. You know, well, it's all import, but the Chinese, you know, the Asian made stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it went from there, and I wound up having a pretty good short run. You know, and when I look back, it's kind of cool because you know, when I was young, my life ambition was to own a high-end drum set, which I think, you know, which at the time I thought, well, when my dad, you know, whenever the time comes that Dad goes, I'll take my inheritance and go buy myself a really nice Sonor drum set. And so I wound up being you know, very knowledgeable on parts and different phases of the drums and the hardware and stuff over the years and all that. And had this customer base. I had shipped stuff to every state in the country and 24 countries around the world. Sounds impressive. It's really not. These are just parts. This isn't, you know, this was not a high dollar operation. I think I did $60,000 one year. Not a big deal. But you know, for me, it was fun. It was, you know, I'm living the Sonor life, and you know, my ambitions have been to own a Sonor drum set, and here I am. I'm a dealer now.
That's crazy.
Well, you know, and it was really cool, but it came to an abrupt end, and for several reasons, mostly out of my control. But you know, I never had a game plan.
Well, tell me about Buzz King. Like
Buzz King. There's an interesting guy.
Being that we're talking about Sonor.
Yeah. Well, I had 2. I got on the phone with him twice. I bought back in '93. Sonor came back out with the D500 reissue, which was a 5x14 ferromanganese seamless shell snare drum. The reissues had the heavy die-cast tubes. Now I'm a knucklehead back then. I mean, I've been playing drums for like 8 years, and I'm in my living room floor with a Evans Genera dry drum head because I didn't want any ring. And I've got my head like 6 inches from the snare drum, and I'm tapping on the snare drum, and it's ringing. And I'm getting really frustrated. Now, you know, a drum's going to sound a lot different when you've got your ear up to it than it does when you're 10 feet away.
Right.
Or even, you know, playing it like, you know, just in a normal setting. So I'm getting agitated. And I called Sonor because I wasn't happy with the drum. And I'll never forget, I get on the phone with Buzz, and I said, man, I just can't get this drum to sound right, and I don't like it. And he said, that drum should sound really good. In fact, that drum should kick ass. That was his exact words. And he said, how are you tuning it? And I told him, I was trying to get a big fat sound out of it. A 5-inch deep snare drum, and I'm trying to get a big fat sound out of it. And he said, man, you got to crank that thing up to really. And when I did, good Lord, man, one of my all-time favorite snare drums. And so on the die-cast hoops, it had the extended snare gates, so you could thread the throw off. You could unscrew the throw off and slide it through the snare gate when you wanted to change the bottom head or whatever without
Right.
having to undo the wires. And made it really fussy for trying to put into a case. So I called Sonor, or I called Honer, and I said, "Look, y'all know where I can get a case that accommodates this thing?" And oh yeah, our guy Buzz King builds cases for all the Sonor endorsers. So I get back on the phone with this guy, and he tells me he builds a case specifically that that cradles that. And I ordered one. It was $125, and it was around up until a couple of years ago. I bought it and sold it a few times with and then Tim Davis wound up with it, and he sold it, and I might never see it again. But I have had it within the last couple of years, and it's still a killer case. And he was a real interesting guy, and I wound up buying several cases from him over the years, and we became friends somewhere along the way. And in 1998, after Mom had died, Mom died at the end of '97, so we sold her house, and I ordered a new S-Class kit, which was the new, pretty much almost the lower end of the German-made Sonor stuff at the time, and I ordered flight cases. I mean, like I'm ready to go on tour,
Yeah. I hear you.
Got and I've always been that way. I've always bought stuff that just really didn't make sense. But you know what? I just don't have any regrets. When I'm dead, it's not going to matter what drums I did or didn't have, or the fact I spend more on drums than I do a car. I don't care. Yeah.
Does your drum set cost more than your car? That's gonna be a good question.
Yeah. Well,
Mine definitely does.
well, the thing, changing topics, but with my car, I figured out how to, if I tried to sell it, I figured out how to double the value. All I got to do is go fill it up with high octane fuel, and the value doubles right off the bat. So anyway, back on track. So Buzz turned out to be a really cool guy, and I went up there in '98 to pick up these big old cases. I had this big truck I'd bought from a construction company, crew cab, long wheelbase, the long bed and all that stuff. And these were like stupidly big cases. I mean, an insane, and go up there and we meet and hang out for an evening and all that stuff. He was a really nice guy, and he at that point he had left Honer. He was no longer the product manager for Sonor, but he was doing his own thing, and he wound up. He was associated with Gretsch to a degree, and Sabian, and then Sabian acquired Camber, and I'm going to get some of this out of whack, but it doesn't matter. But he developed a lot of products for the Camber brand as an affiliate of Sabian, and I bought some of that stuff when I had my dealership and resold it, and so we've been friends over the years, and I've seen him. Well, several times in the last year, I've been by his place, and we'd go out to eat and that kind of thing. And he's a lot of fun, and he tells all kinds of cool stories, and he sees the industry in a little bit of a different perspective than people that haven't been that deep into the industry. Because he was the Sonor product manager from I think '78 to the mid '90s, and he had a really good run with them. And then Honer had lost Sonor's distributorship for a while, and so when they had that void in brands, Fred Gretsch owned the Slingerland brand and intellectual rights and some of their equipment and all that. And so Buzz, as an employee of Honer, the S in HSS that was Sonor became the S from Slingerland, and Honer distributed that stuff, and Buzz actually developed it. So Buzz developed the new products, which included a Gretsch-made Slingerland Light drum set that was kind of based on the Sonor Light with the thinner shell, but it was a maple shell instead of the birch, and then a lot of import stuff, and it did good. And then eventually, Honer got Sonor back, and again, I don't know the actual sequence, but Fred wound up selling the Slingerland brand to Gibson, and and then so Sonor wound up back at Honer, and and then eventually Buzz was no longer there. But he's had this case company for a long time, and he stays really busy with that. And a funny story was he actually had Meinl cymbals for a while. He was the U.S. distributor of Meinl cymbals, and he had a really serious inventory. And I went up there and got to play a lot of stuff, and wound up buying a good bit of Meinl stuff. But one thing about Buzz is one of those guys that you get to talking about something, and he's always got a story that ties into what you're talking about. You start to think, you know what? I think this guy's kind of full of it. And one time we were talking about Meinl and different, ideas for drummers to try to recruit as endorsers. And at that time, Dale Gray with Little Texas had swapped drum companies several times in a couple of years. And I said, why don't you reach out to Dale Gray? I said, because I know he was moving around drum companies for a while. And Buzz said, yeah, well, I signed him to Sonor. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, here we go again. Well, lo and behold, I was over at a friend's house one day, and he was at his desk doing something. I'm going through his CDs, and I picked up a little Texas CD, and I'm reading the liner in there. And of all the people they were thanking Buzz King at Sonor. Mm. And I'm like, that's the last time I'm going to doubt that guy. And you know what? It was unfounded because he's never told me anything that didn't shake out as accurate. He's just a cool guy because he understands a lot of things about the industry and all that. And he's pretty much a very Sonor loyal guy, even though he's no longer part of the international design team or anything like that. He does have some some classic vintage drums from other companies he'll take out and use sometimes.
Yeah.
But his heart's still with Sonor.
Yeah. I don't know, like Sonor, it seems like, what causes you to like Sonor so much? Like, what's the reason? Because you're loyal to Sonor. You are. I mean, between you and Tim Davis, I don't know. Y'all love some Sonor. You don't have a Sonor tattoo yet?
I do not. You say yet. I don't like the tattoos I've got now. I'm thinking about getting a cheese grater and taking them off because I can't stand
I got a grinder, man.
Hey, that'll work. Anything, just try not to scar it up. I'd rather have scars than the tattoos. Boy, there's a big regret.
Well, we get stuff when we're early, and you kind of grow out of stuff. I'm like, what was I thinking? I do that stuff all the time. I was like, where was I at? What was I thinking at that time? And
these aren't decisions that go away just because you know. But I know you weren't serious about the Sonor tattoo. I guess you weren't. But no, I won't be getting that. I don't have any AC/DC tattoos either.
You love some AC/DC?
Oh, I have in the past. I guess I've kind of burned out. And they were recently on tour, and Phil's not with them. Yeah. And it's not just a Phil Rudd loyalty thing. The band's just not the same when he's not drumming. And they even know that.
Yeah. There's a touch and a feel that drummers bring to their presence and to the band that's kind of like, to most people, it's not you can't really tell the difference. But to those people that can, it's night and day. They bring the energy, they bring the vibe. Drummers just have like a unique touch, and you can almost tell a drummer's style just by listening to him and how he plays and how he holds the sticks and all that. It's really it's eye-awakening. It is.
Well, I started listening to AC/DC. I found the 74 Jailbreak album in the Central Library in Albany back in '85. And I'd always thought it was the coolest band name ever. So I take the album home, and it was from the early from 73 and 74, and was not at all what I expected. But I really enjoyed it. And so I started listening to them. And, this is in '85. So I wound up getting the Fly on the Wall CD from Columbia House, one of those you send your penny, and then So that was my first record deal. But anyway, so I get the tape. I think it was a Fly on the Wall, and it was such a huge contrast from the earlier stuff. I didn't even like it, and it was way overproduced, and it also had a different drummer. By this point, now Phil wasn't on. The only song he was on '74 Jailbreak was the song Jailbreak. There was a different drummer on the rest of those songs. By this time, I'm starting to listen to other stuff too. But it was such a huge departure. But when Fly on the Wall came out, that was the first album in like 9 years that didn't have Phil Rudd playing drums. But the album was such a huge, overproduced departure from the stuff leading up to it that the having a new drummer wasn't the only thing. I mean, there was so much that changed. I don't. It's like you say that your average guy probably didn't even realize the drummer was different because the album was so different. You went from a very stripped down, raw recording process on mastering and all that on flick of the switch, and then Fly on the Wall was way overdone.
Yeah,
it was like an overcorrection. But anyway, so then the next one that really took off was the Razor's Edge, which had even another drummer. And going through the flow of things, I don't think your average guy, maybe even your average drummer, really realized what an impact Phil had to the music. Then when he came back in the mid '90s, it's like,
ooh,
that's the AC/DC I remember
Yeah.
from the early '80s on those the Highway to Hell was '79.
Yeah.
You had about 3 or 4 well, actually probably 5 albums right there that just really make up and define that AC/DC classic sound. And they got it back in the '90s when they brought their drummer back and some of their recording. They used all old gear and all that stuff for that recording. But I think that was the first time that people, even drummers, really realized, well, wait a minute, I get it now. And he's departed again twice since then. But they always, it's time to do something serious. They try to bring him back.
They get him back,
and they get it. I mean, they get it. So that was my Phil Rudd thing. And I remember in high school, Neil Peart was a lot of people's favorite.
Who's your favorite drummer?
Favorite? Yes,
I know it changes because mine changes. Like I'll kind of fall in love with this guy for a little while, and then I go out, and then I go find somebody else will just kind of start doing. And I'm just trying to start taking a lot of these little parts from each drummer and just kind of making a whole nother avatar, and then almost kind of trying to put my own style to it too.
Right?
Like because some of the because sometimes you have a weaker hand and a weaker foot and no double bass or single pedal, and I feel like it can really go either way, and just being able to just love drums is where the key.
I'm not sure about my favorite drummer. Phil Rudd has had the biggest musical impact on me. I like his groove. I can't nail it like he does. I mean, that's a.
Well, you was hanging out with the other day. Who was that drummer you was hanging out with
Ron Wixo.
Ron Wixo. Yeah.
We went to the.
He's the drummer for.
He's been with Steve Miller since 2021.
Steve Miller. Yep.
But he's got a very dynamic background. He used to be Cher's drummer. He's played with David Lee Roth before Greg Bissonette went in there. He's played with Greg Rowley, one of the original guys from Journey. He very connected guy.
Because you was calling me about you. I was at the Atlanta drum shop, and you said that he walked over there with you didn't say anything about Outlaw or nothing, and he like went over there. And the first snare of all those snares, one of the first ones that.
The only snare I remember him taking off the wall was the one you had in there with the Welch tuning system. He saw that and just went straight for it.
Yeah.
And but Ron's he's a really cool guy. I've met with Todd Zuckerman before, and Todd's a sweetheart of a man, and an amazing drummer. But Ron seems kind of like the guy that lives across the street that just has a really cool job.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just down to earth, and I've met him a couple of times. I've interviewed him twice. One time was like in 2011 or 2012 or something, and it was through email exchanges. And then the last time was the last audio video I did. That was an audio interview. This on YouTube. And it was by far the best too, because he wanted to put his fingerprint on it. Besides just being interviewed, he actually injected clips from songs from these different projects he's done. Creedence Clearwater Revisited, which was about half the guys from the Creedence Clearwater Revival, without John Fogerty. But he's been involved in all this stuff, and he was working with all these people. And he's one of my favorites, and he's not one of my favorites because he's a technically fanatical, over the top lead drummer guy, but any situation he gets in, he's just rock solid and nails it. And this guy, Steve Preston, he's a local retired DJ, and I follow him on Facebook. He went to the concert a while back that had Steve Miller opening for Journey and Def Leppard. And out of everything there, his favorite band that night was Steve Miller. And they pulled it off. They were tight and everything was good. And that's one thing I like about Ron, and he knows how to get in there and play for the music. And then you've got these really technical, proficient drummers that I call them lead drummers.
Lead drummers.
Yeah, hey, Todd Zuckerman's an example. He's not back there filling your typical role. He's on top of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it. The band likes it. The fans like it.
A lot of people, the band's known for the drummer, because it's like that's basically in the center stage, and man.
So and I'm not knocking that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's a different,
it's a different type.
Right. It's a different type drummer, and that and somebody that plays like Ron does appeals to me because that's more my approach.
Right.
I don't have the aptitude to be, and I have issues with joints, so I could sit there and practice the Kingdom Come and never be proficient at flashy, really fast playing. As a matter of fact, the times I've spent a lot of time really practicing, I wind up aggravating issues, and there's been over the years I've had several times I didn't play for a couple of years because of it. So my less is more approach is not only because that's just my attitude towards my playing.
Right.
But that's how I have to live because I don't have an option.
Gotcha.
But anyway, back to Ron. Ron's a great guy, and and when I met him in Atlanta in December, you know what? Let me back up. This is another thing about Drum Center of Portsmouth. The day I got back on a Saturday from meeting with Shane on our original meeting, and then he called me on my way back. Way back down and told me to get ready to come back up. So I get home on Saturday. Ron gets in touch on Sunday and says, hey, we played at Sweetwater Studios. We played on an SQ1 Birch set, and we've got a Tempest drum set. Now, I don't think Ron mentioned how old it was, but the Tempest drum set very easily could be from the 80s or 90s. So this is a touring drum set that's decades old, at least a few decades old. And so they get in the studio. Apparently, Steve liked the idea of the Birch stuff, so he put Ron in charge of finding. Well, Ron contacts me because Ron felt like I had a really good working knowledge of Sonor, and Ron's a Sonor endorser. So Drum Center had, a month or two or however long before that, come out with a 2-part video. And this is something that not everybody does. Now, this is another specialty of Drum Center of Portsmouth. Shane ordered, or whoever ordered, 13 SQ2 drum sets. And they're available in 3 different woods, the maple, birch, and the beech. And so in each wood, you've got vintage, thin, and heavy, and medium. So you got 4 different shell thicknesses in 3 different wood types. Then you've got an acrylic. So you add all that up, that's 13 different possible wood combinations.
Yeah.
They ordered the identical specs in every different possible wood shell configuration. That's 13 drum sets. So they, using a tune bot, they tuned everything identical. And I really would have guessed I'd have been for the heavy beech. Just makes all kinds of logical sense. Sonor always a beech company for years. They broke away into maple at some point, and then the birch. And the idea with the birch, with them and other companies, was birch is very machinable. So if you're going for a thin shell, birch was a very good wood to use because it would machine well, even thin, and it was still stout, and it had really good sonic properties. So funny enough, I never equated with a thick shell with birch. My favorite sounding drum set, hands down, was the heavy birch SQ2 set.
Heavy, like
Heavy.
because the shell was thick.
It was a thick shell. And,
how thick of a shell? With like a half-inch thick, or probably?
No, it wouldn't have been quite that much, but because it probably, I'd say maybe 9 millimeters. I should know this, being such a Sonor nut. I'm going to say maybe 9 millimeters.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so I send Ron the links to the video. Say, hey, watch these when you get time. I almost wish I hadn't given him my opinion first, because I'd have liked to seen what he came up with on his own. But he called me back. He said, hey, I watched those, and I agree with you. The heavy birch sounds great. And now, let's just put this in perspective, okay? I've just gotten back from the world's largest independently owned drum shop, talking to a 20-year buddy of mine, Shane, about to sell everything off and move up. And now I'm on the phone with Steve Miller's drummer, putting together a deal. I mean, I haven't even signed the W-4 form. They don't even have an application on. They don't know my birth date, my social security number, or nothing. And I'm putting together a deal with a national or international touring act. Who the hell hasn't heard, Fly Like an Eagle, Abracadabra, The Joker? I mean, who does not know who the Steve Miller Band is?
Yeah.
So I'm like beyond excited. And I remember ambushing Shane early the next morning, because the phone call with Ron happened on Sunday. And I can tell a lot of stories, as you see. So let me come back to the story part. So Ron picks out this drum set from DCP. It's a white sparkle 10, 12, 14, 16, 22. And Ron asked me what I recommended in the way of a snare drum. Well, of course, I've got the most awesome snare drum currently in production in my possession. And I said, well, Ron, I would recommend the 6x14 Pro Light with the heavy die-cast tubes, because it does come with triple flange also. So I specified the die-cast tubes. I said, but the problem is I don't think you're going to find one right now, because they're hardly bringing them into the country, which they are phasing them out. And I said, but you know what? I think I can get you the store to sell it. I think I can get the store to sell it to you. I'll sell it to the store, and then the store will sell it as part of this package. So we get the drum set locked down, and the next day I get on the phone with Shane, and I'm like, Shane, Steve Miller went to Sweetwater, picked out a birch. No, they didn't pick it out. That's what the studio had. They played on it. All of a sudden, Steve Miller wants a new drum set. Now I'm thinking, we're going to give them a great discount, all this stuff. You can't do that. I mean, you've got all this stuff in inventory. These are custom ordered drums. These aren't drums you can just give away to somebody just to make a point.
Yeah.
And but I told Shane the story, and I said, look, I said I'm not even there yet, and I've already got this deal going, and they're not going through Sonor. They're trying to go through us to get it, because Sonor didn't have anything like that, or KHS didn't have anything like that in stock. They'd have had to have it built, which you're looking at an 8 to 12 month lead time. Well, they're getting ready for this stadium tour. They're not wanting to wait a year on this new drum set. So they wound up getting the hardware through KHS, through his endorsement, which is cool. But I was so antsy to get it done. I told Shane that morning, I said, Shane, I'll pay for the drum set myself just so I can tell the story. What I didn't want to do is I didn't want to lose the deal. I didn't want them to wind up getting, finding something suitable somewhere else. or deciding that, well, you know what, since we're having to buy something, it doesn't really have to be Sonor after all. I'm like, I got to make this happen. This is a story I've just got to be able to tell. And Shane said, Julian, this isn't really the way we do things. And so anyway,
he's like, calm down.
yeah. I mean, how can you?
I know.
How
I'm about
can
where
you?
too. I'm too much for some people.
And yeah. So anyway, it worked out. They bought it, and it took a little time. And there was some. It actually became a stressful situation for me, quite honestly. Um, you know, there's a process you have to go through when you're dealing. You got tour managers and band managers and all this stuff that have controls of the monies and decisions and all this. So it's not like, Ron picked the drum set out and the next day they're wiring the money over. I mean, you got to pass it through the proper channels and do this stuff. And so I'm on the phone one day because Ron is still expecting to buy the hardware from us too at this point. And so I'm putting this thing together. They wanted 2 snare drum stands, and I don't have access to the system, so I have to do all this through Shane. So me and Ron are talking and getting this stuff put together, and I'm putting it in my cart and getting Shane to update the quote and all that. Shane's a very busy person, so I get a quote back where it'd gone from 1 snare drum stand to 12. It's supposed to be 2. So he added a 2 instead of replacing the 1 with a 2. So we're going through several of these changes. And this is over the course of a couple of days. And I pull up my cart one day and the drum set's not in it. And I'm like, oh, I hope they haven't sold that drum set. And I'm on the phone with Ron. And Ron's always been a super cool, really cordial guy. And I said, Ron, I got to check here. They might have sold that drum set. And Ron said, I thought y'all had that on hold for me. He said, I'm really going to be pissed off if I've gone through all this and now the drums aren't available. So I don't know why it fell out of my cart, but it was still available. It was still for sale on the website. So I put it back in my cart and I contacted Shane, and Shane's like, well, Julian, we can't hold things for people. If they wanted to put a deposit or go ahead and pay for it or something. And then Ron was even talking about putting a deposit off his credit card, but I've already been in drum sales and stuff, and I bring my own mentality about customer service. And and really it got stressful for me because I'm having trouble getting this drum set put on hold without a deposit. But I've got a buyer here that I'm 90% sure is going to buy this drum set, and I'm 100% sure that I want to be the guy that sold Steve Miller his drum set.
Yeah.
Bands don't normally go to music stores to buy gear of that level.
Right.
Now, Steve Miller's guitars probably didn't come from Sweetwater. He's probably got old antique guitars that have got a history, or they don't make them like that anymore, or that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? But this is a brand new drum set. And so, I'm sitting here, and finally Shane says, you know what? I'll put it on hold till the end of the week. Well, this whole thing winds up taking about a month to finally come to fruition for a number of reasons. And so it finally did happen. But, and incidentally, in the short time I was at DCP, I did wind up selling another SQ2 drum set, which was pretty cool for the new guy to sell 2 SQ2s pretty quick. And there was a guy that was talking to one of the managers about one drum set, and he's talking to Shane about a different drum set, and talking to me about the SQ2s. Well, I got the down payment. I got the deposit to get to the 50% deposit to get the SQ2s ordered. So he's talking to 3 people about 3, and I sold the SQ2 set. I think in the long run I'd have been a great, but and that's another effect, another issue too, is I've been a Sonor fanatic for a long time, and I get up there to DCP, and all the older guys that are, the manager, well, one of the managers and Shane and a couple other guys are all real hardcore Sonor guys. and they're doing this full time for years.
Yeah.
So my little bucket of knowledge really doesn't even weigh into the fact they've been hardcore at it for a long time. Now they never treated me that way. They never looked down at me like, well, you're the new guy. You don't know what we know. You haven't done what we. It was never like that. But for me, uh, the expertise I felt like I was bringing to it really paled in comparison to what these guys have done. You look at the videos and all that stuff they've done. And Tony owns a lot of Sonor gear from current stuff to own back and all that. And so I didn't feel as special when I got there. That sounds kind of silly, but that was just another thing. As I get there, I'm like, wow, in my own little world, I was a Sonor absorbed guy. I get here, and these guys, they're really heavy duty guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of feel a little bit intimidated, a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if intimidated is really the right word, but I didn't feel like my product knowledge really outweighed them.
Yeah.
So anyway, long way around on that story there. But anyway, so getting back to Ron Wixo, the timing was really cool in the way that worked out. And then I actually met him face to face in Atlanta in December. One of the first gigs they had with the new drum set and my snare drum, and that's cool. Now, who do you know that their personal snare drum is out on tour with a major act? So that was cool for me. And they actually didn't use the 10-inch tom tom, and I've wound up with it. I'm actually going to be buried. I'm going to be cremated and buried in that drum. For years, I've been planning to order one anyway. So I'm going to use Steve Miller's tom tom to be cremated, buried.
Are you really? Is that what you're going to do?
Very much. Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
You're going to be put inside of a drum.
Inside of a drum.
Pretty good.
And I was going to custom order one.
I'm going to be put underneath a black walnut tree.
It was either that or, just for expense reasons, get a wood chipper and just spread my body out under a tree somewhere. Anyway, goofy. So anyway, what's next?
Yeah, man. So Julian, what do you think about so tell me a little bit about your playing. Tell me a little bit about your playing and your playing style and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I just kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's just how I've always done things. It works out best for me. I grew up, or cut my teeth in playing, listening to the Bee Gees, which has got a good feel to it, and AC/DC, which has got a good groove and all that. I'm not a drummer's drummer, and I know that. And what I do, I just play in churches now, but most of the bands I've been in, the churches I've played in, really like what I did, because I just I don't run over anybody.
You went over the top, not just trying to overpower everybody. The worst thing is a drummer that's just so loud and putting so much stuff in, you can't even play. It's just everything's a feel, and it's just
In my take on it is this: if you're keeping it really simple and just adding a little bit here and there, a flam can mean so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rarely in a beat. But if you're all the time just all over, you're crowding the music, and it depends on the music. I mean, I remember Elvis being interviewed, asking him questions about things, and he said, "Look, I'm just an entertainer. I really don't want to get into that." And they asked him, "Do you think other entertainers should feel the same way?" He said, "No, I'm not even going to say that." So, for myself, it's what works, and it's fit. Any music situation pretty much. I mean, there was one band that it really didn't work out with one time. They were going into a style of music just a little bit beyond my depth, for one thing, and I was having some sleep issues at the time, and had not been playing for a few years. So, but other than that, people have really enjoyed my playing.
Yeah,
and it's just knowing my limitations and in my approach.
Yeah. Few more questions here. So, what would you say to inspiring people that really want to start selling drums, kind of getting into that market? I know you've paid a lot of dues to do this. Would you have any advice that you would give them as far as keeping them, maybe not making so many mistakes, or not? I don't even call them mistakes. I think it's just on the lines of you learn by doing. You learn by doing, and you kind of. I mean, just like earlier in the drum building stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we don't do anymore that we used to do. You know, so you grow, you learn, you improvise, you do stuff, that you fix stuff, and eventually you kind of start working together a real solid package. Is there any advice that you would give for that?
Well, passion is a lot of it. If you don't have a passion for it, you can forget it. If you do have a passion, you got to have a plan, and that's something I didn't really do. I didn't have projections. I wasn't keeping track of, okay, I did this much money this month, this, for a quarter or whatever. Next year I need to be here. Here's my game plan for how to, you got to know where you're at and where you're going, and then you've got to have a game plan to make it happen. But the best wisdom I could give somebody trying to start out is to be careful making your hobby your day job.
Ooh.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot different than you think it is. It's a lot of fun when you don't have to do it. It's like, I just got back off the road I spent 8 days on the road, and most of it was driving. I went and ate at some cool places and did some cool stuff. But for me, it was real cathartic being out there driving, and somebody said, man, you ought to be a truck driver. And I said, hell no. I recruit truck drivers. I know what they go through. I watch what happens on the road when people, don't realize going in front of them is a bad idea. And I think I just messed this up. But, when I'm out, and this is something you got to think about. When I'm out on the road driving around doing my own thing, if I see something I want to stop at, I can stop.
Yeah.
If I want to spend the night somewhere that I hadn't planned on, I can do whatever I want to do. If I'm out there for a living as a trucker, I've got a dispatcher wanting to know why I'm not already where I'm at. I got cars cutting me off in traffic. I've got the DOT trying to find reasons to pull me over and take my license. It's a whole different ball game, a whole different set of pressure when you transition from something that's a hobby to your day job.
Yeah, it almost loses the passion. Like, it's just the minute you start making money on something that you love to do, it debunks it. So you would have to say you need to first develop how much of a passion do you want this to really continue to be your passion,
right?
Or do you want to make? Because here's the thing: when you start bringing that into your passion realm, you introduce it to the forefront and start having to capitalize on it and making money on it. It's not going to be your number one thing no more. It's not going to be just the way psychology even works.
I don't think that it will ever be my day job again.
Yeah.
I'm doing this stuff after, I've been on a little bit of a hiatus from recruiting, and several of us within our group are actually moving to a new division, and that's in the works right now. But that's going to be my day job.
Yeah.
The buying and selling and all that stuff, that's just that's fulfilling an interest and a passion for me.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll make a little bit of money at it on top of all that. Because I've already been in the situation where what was fun and exciting and all that, became a responsibility.
Yeah.
And now you've got to make it work. You've got, your rent isn't based on how your business is doing.
No.
You can't adjust your health issues and need for medical care, your electricity bill and all that stuff. That isn't all based on your income. So if you don't have a solid plan, and then you don't even know, and this goes back to something else about Shane. I want to point this out without getting too deep into his personal or his business operation. I told you that he had 33 drum sets, 33 SQ2 drum sets. The lead time on those, depending on whether it's a matte finish or gloss or whatever, you can be 8 to 12 months for delivery time on that. So you order a bunch of stuff from a bunch of companies and you've got a long lead time. Look how much the economy can change in no time flat.
Yeah.
So, music gear picked up a lot during COVID because people couldn't get out of the house. And so, what am I going to do? Well, I'll order a guitar. Sweetwater said they had some record sales on guitars and that kind of thing. So, for a lot of industries, it became a booming time. And somehow for us in recruiting truck drivers, 2021 was a record year. We'll never see anything like that again because the stars just lined up between some federal government regulations and COVID and all that. But, getting back to Shane and the economy and all that, when you're gauging something on current situations or projections, it's a roll of the dice. When he ordered a bunch of drum sets from some of these bigger companies and all that, and it takes a while to get them, you have no idea what's going to happen between now and then. And the flip side of that is, last time I looked, Sweetwater had 3 SQ2 drum sets in stock. So you got one guy here that's heavily invested, and see, they don't wait on you to pay. You don't get all this stuff, and then they say, you know what, just pay us whenever it works out for you. You know, you got deadlines, the money's due.
Yeah.
And so either you've got a mediocre inventory, you've got a huge inventory, or like Sweetwater with SQ2s, you've got hardly anything. And so, you can anticipate this, but if it doesn't shake out the way you think it does, or if you're not prepared, I mean, what if all of a sudden something happened and everybody's all of a sudden wanting a high-end Sonor drum set? Well, guess who's got them? But how do you guess that? How do you, my crystal ball's in the shop. I don't know what things are going to be like in a year.
Yeah.
We could really be booming, or we could be continuing this spiral down the drain, so there's a lot of things that factor into running a drum business that you can't even predict.
Yeah, that's for daggone sure. I know that. It's always we're having to always just kind of go with the punches and how the economy's doing, how people are spending, and you're looking for the elections and all that kind of stuff, and you're just trying to go with the flow. And because there's certain times of the year that everybody's buying new stuff, and then there's certain times of the year that there's not, and being able to go with the flow and not be so much thankfully for me, I mean, this is not one of my main sources of income, so we're able to kind of do some other stuff but it is a source of income too, so it's not a dire need, especially like with the new the Airbnbs and the drum building experiences that we're doing, and the new sound control 2.1 that we're ramping up, or 2.0. Yeah, the sound control series 2.0. And that's basically the new stuff that we're working on. Literally, I got stuff sitting in the water right now, just kind of seeing how tough it is and how just doing tests, because that's the only way you really find out how to do stuff. It's just you got to test it, you got to try stuff out, see if it works, and that's kind of what you've done. You've tested, you've tried different things, and you see how it is, and you don't know until you do it. You don't know really how it's going to be until you do it. You can talk about it, but until you actually touch your foot in the water and just kind of dive, well, like you just took a plunge. You didn't even test the water. You just jumped straight in. And I really admire that about you, your courage and your ability to just take chances. And that's what drummers do, man. They do take chances, and they do go in there and do what they got to do. And, weird drummers definitely are different breeds. And, Julian, I just appreciate you so much for being on the podcast show and telling your story. And do you have anything else you want to say at the conclusion of our show?
No, I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed talking about some things that I haven't really talked about much.
Kind of digging up some
old
bones.
Yeah, and plus I wanted to clear the air too. When I left DCP,
because I saw those posts on Facebook, I was like, oh my God, what has happened? Something has happened. And because remember you was telling me when you was leaving, everything you was selling. Everything.
Yep. And, I got done. I went in there and I talked to, after Shane and I had the quick exchange, I went in there to Tony and Jeremy. And, I couldn't even tell if we talked 30 minutes or an hour or 10 minutes or what, but they basically want to know what my issues were with all that. And that's when Jeremy mentioned the fact that he felt like part of my disappointment was not having more of an interaction with Shane, and that was a factor. But like I say, it's just everything adding up.
Yeah.
To a situation, to being
a lot of little things that kind of keep.
Yeah. And so got done talking with them, and like with talking with Shane when I first got up there the first time, I was just open and honest about some things that I have some ideals about some customer service things that when you're doing something yourself, you can, if you wanted to give all your outlaw drums away, you don't answer to anybody about that. If I was working for you, then whatever your customer service or your attitude towards, we're going to help this guy out or whatever, when you're living to somebody else's standards, it's a different ball game. And really another factor in all this is I've been a business owner since 2019. And so that was part of the financial thing. I went from owning a business that did really good for several years, and I made my own decisions, and what I said went, and that kind of thing to a large degree. Now you're conforming to somebody else's standards, and your money, you're living on a different budget. Just put it that way, living on a different budget. And so that was all tied into the whole thing. So I got done talking to Jeremy and Tony, and I walked outside, and I took a selfie of me and the sign. My caption was "That's a wrap." Some people assumed I got fired, which was not at all what happened. I didn't get fired, and I also didn't leave because I didn't leave. I wasn't mad or anything, and there wasn't anything like that. It was just like with going up there. When my brain came to a decision, I did it, and I got to a point. I'm like, you know what? This just does not fit my world right now.
Yeah.
And so when I sent that message, when Shane went back and forth, at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm going back home. I'll get to work in my business again. I'll do what I'm used to doing. I'll start over. I wasn't even going to buy any music gear. I mean, I was just not even pursue this at this point. And it took a while before I bought a new drum set. But anyway, so just kind of wrapping it up. And I've gotten to a point in my life where I try to leave everybody or everything better than I found them. Even if it's just cracking a joke and making them smile. If I'm in a line at Dollar General or whatever.
Yeah.
Somebody asks me how I'm doing. I say, if I was any better, I'd be twins. And it always gets a positive response. And I've been this way for years. I've always, just for so many years now, I've tried to, and that's something that didn't happen. I didn't, with Shane, the situation is a mess. And so even though I totally get what you're saying, it's still something that in my mind is kind of like, you know what, if I could go back and just make him smile, just crack a joke, and I mean that metaphorically.
Yeah.
But, it's just not in me to be at peace with leaving something in such a, such a mess. And that's going to always be something that's going to be in my mind to want to fix. Am I going to drive back up to New Hampshire, rolling the dice to get to talk to him? No, I won't do that.
That'd be a trip.
And am I sorry I did it this time? I am not. I'm not one that lives in regrets. I just don't do it. I've got a friend that criticizes my quick turnover of music gear. I don't care. The only regret I've got is that I didn't keep that first Sonor snare drum I had. That's out of all the guitars and basses and recording stuff and drums, I've got one regret out of all of it.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I live. And
cool, Julian. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being on the show, man. And bro, you're just an awesome guy, man.
Well, I don't know about all that. But I hope this doesn't bore folks to sleep. They might not listen to your program anymore after hearing it.
Thank you again, man.
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you. Yeah. Thank you all again so much for hanging out and listening to another episode of the Process Podcast. Special shout out to all our Patreons over there. Guys, God bless you. Thank you so much. It's y'all's support that keeps these podcasts, this kind of stuff going. We want to say thank you to people that just hung out to the very end of the episode. And we're going to continue on. We're going to continue on with some episodes. We're going to continue on doing some new stuff, some different stuff. If you have an idea or if you think that you could be want to be a guest on our show, want to come to Georgia, we have a place, we have a setup where you can come and set up and even stay here with us here at Outlaw Drums and do a podcast episode, hang out, talk drums, see how drums are made. You can email me at Michael at MSCHAEL at outlawdrums.com. We can do more about that, but thank you so much for hanging out and hope to see you soon. Peace.